I'm the Weird Christian, and I'm going to be doing a criticism of the Westminster Confession. Now, as far as I know, I haven't really heard any real criticisms of the Westminster Confession. Nobody's actually seemed to be able to talk about it with any kind of um, questioning it at all. I'm just kind of all saying, oh, it's Wonderbar. Anyway, I don't have an idea that it's Wonderbar, and it's also an article that is fundamental for the Westminster parliamentary system, which has a problem too. Okay, so um, and this is a complex subject, and so and you have to introduce it. It's going to be a series. It'll be a while just introducing some basic concepts so we can actually move forward in the conversation with the Westminster Confession. This is not a PhD dissertation, nor do I know all things. This is written to address issues that I have been led to when searching the fundamentals of Christianity. I have asked questions that, in the current circles of Christianity, have not been asked or addressed adequately. This does not mean that I know or am going to be addressed adequately or robustly. I'm just trying to address it because nobody else has been. It is a complex and overwhelming problem, but it must be addressed if society and the church wish to know the truth of reality, and for the church actually to be a light to the world instead of just going along with the world and not really adding anything fundamentally good to the world. I'm not saying the church doesn't add stuff, but we're really falling short, especially in the last few tribulation things that have been going on. Really, and I think the churches themselves know that they have fallen short. Or at least they should know. It has only recently come to my attention that a series of problems exist within Christian doctrine. Early in my Christian walk, I considered learning God's ways stimulating. Like, I questioned, and the people that I was with, they questioned, and we had stimulating conversations. And searching for truth should be open, not a study of a closed system, which is what people have turned it. They've boxed God into a little box and made a little closed system. The first denomination I encountered was the Seventh-day Adventist denomination. That's the first church I really encountered. I mean, I went to the United Church a couple of times when I was a kid. That's about it. Anyway, and I received my second baptism in the Seventh-day Adventist Church. But my first baptism was out of an ice-covered river where I asked for life, and God brought me out of death into life. In the Seventh-day Adventist Church, they have several teachings particular to their denomination. And they have a prophet called Ellen G. White, who wrote several books and promoted her understanding of Christianity. I met several interesting characters in that church and was involved in an awesome, challenging musical production, Handel's Messiah, with some great people, Estelle Jorgensen, Elise Stram, and some other people. And examining their prophets' writings, I found many failings, and after the Jonestown incident, that was last century, I realized that there were too many markers of this denomination being a cult, so I left that church. Since that time, I have been involved in many churches, but in the last few years, God has told me to be proactive because He is moving, and you can see a lot of God's movement in the world now if you're looking. So I published several books, mostly for my own edification, not really, other people, if they want to read it and understand things, or go on my journey, they can read my books. One was Out of the Cave to Become Men. That was on Amazon, but it's not there anymore apparently. And then another one is self-published, and you really have to, it's called The Spirit of Capitalism, and you really have to contact me personally in order to get it. So it's not easy to get. But anyway, I have worked with people moved by the Spirit to action in churches, attempting to bring light in these dark times and awaken people to the dangers of tyrants in places of power. I've been involved with the freedom movement and with churches in Alberta that have said we've got a problem in Canada with understanding law and authority, and that's basically what they said. One fellow, you guys probably know, Arthur Pawlowski, he called the police Nazis, and they behave like Nazis actually. And there's all sorts of things going on in the court systems in Canada, which should make it apparent to people that the law system doesn't understand what justice is, and they don't understand. They have a law system, a legal system, but they don't really have a justice system. But anyway, this is why I'm addressing this in the Westminster Confession about the system we're living in, how to be a light, how to tell people the difference between the kingdom of God and the kingdoms of this world. So this is the whole point of this series. While relating to Christians, I have related to Christians. I have been, kind of excommunicated by them. Personal excommunications, not church excommunications, but for my attempts to be of service. One time I was trying to get a church to have a proper eldership and in this church, and was kicked out of the church for that reason, but it was pretended to be another reason. And for also people have, not talked to me because of my understanding of the Bible and Christianity, and for asking questions about the fundamentals of Christianity. So this is something that's happened to me during a recent encounter. Well, in the last, maybe year, I guess I would say, called recent. I was declared an apostate by a person claiming to be a 4-point Calvinist. And this encounter did not offend me. Instead, it increased my curiosity about why this person would make this statement. And after considering this time, I'm just going to do something here. This is just the introduction here. Forgot about that. And after considering this for a time, the word Westminster Confession came into my mind. I had been curious about the English Civil War because of my desire to write a book about the forming of nations. But I did not understand how this war transformed the British nation. It seemed fundamentally the same after Cromwell's death as before to me. Cromwell was a leading figure in the Civil War, English Civil War. So I was going to leave England out of this book about forming of nations. But being called an apostate reawakened my desire to understand this time in English history. Now, I know this war and this document are pivotal in the history of England's system of governance. Not only this document being pivotal in England's governance and law, but also in the development of its religious institutions. After this document, mainland European Christianity won a decisive victory over England's indigenous Christianity. And yes, they are fundamentally different, those two types of Christianity. Okay. In this Christian criticism of the Westminster Confession, there will not be a regular discussion of the two opposing types of Christianity. I'm not going to compare them. Instead, this article will criticize the document's understanding of Christianity to what I know. So I'm just going to go directly to the chase of this document. Because of my understanding of and culture of Christianity appears from my conversation to be foreign to many Christians, I realize that communicating with others will be confusing to them. And to those unfamiliar with Christianity, the concepts I am presenting will likely be alien. So I begin. Effective communication is a cornerstone of any successful interaction, but it can become difficult when people of different cultures come together. When cultures collide, the language barrier is often the most obvious impediment. However, even when people speak the same language, they may struggle to communicate effectively because of cultural differences. One major issue that can arise is the use of common phrases. Phrases commonly used in one culture may have a completely different meaning or interpretation in another. Religious and historical differences play a role in communicating difficulties. For example, the Islamic character of Isa, who they figure is Jesus, is often conflated with the Christian figure of Jesus, leading to confusion and misunderstanding when discussing religious topics. Cultural assumptions and biases also lead to miscommunications. People assume that others share their beliefs, values, and experiences, which causes confusion when this is not the case. In discussing the Westminster Confession, communication difficulties will arise. Differences in language, terminology, religious and historical, cultural assumptions, and biases will make the concepts presented difficult to understand. Be aware of this. The reason why I'm doing this is not to cause division, but to bring a better world to live in and to bring clarity. Okay? So I'm not trying to cause division, even though I'm talking about that these are fundamental issues that have to be addressed. And they're not silly arguments or anything like that, or semantics. These are fundamental and how to relate to one another. And discussing. In my experience, even in my experience discussing the term under the law in Christian circles, has caused confusion and frustration among believers. Okay? And this is only one of the many topics where cultural assumptions and presumptions will hinder communication if one is unaware that this could be an issue. So be patient. I will attempt to do my best to discuss these issues in clarity and being sensitive. Okay. Well, thank you for listening to the introduction. This is just the first part, just to get you to know that it's not an easy topic I am talking about. And in fact, nobody has actually even addressed a criticism of the Westminster Confession. So I have lots more to go into, where its history is, and a development of the different cultural Christianities, the development of the indigenous Christianity on England and the Christianity on the continental Europe. So I'll be talking about that later. And before I even get into the actual document, I'll talk about why the document was written, what its goals were, and so forth. These are all coming up. So stay tuned. This is just part one, an introduction. God bless you.